A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to warmly welcome you to the 132nd webinar of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Today's webinar is the 19th webinar of the 4th webinar series, which focuses on the professional, personal, and career development of the membership. And it is organized by the BASL Seminars Committee in collaboration with the Photographic Society of Sri Lanka. The Seminars Committee is chaired by Secretary BASL, Mr. Rajiv Amrasurya, with the convener, Assistant Secretary, Mr. Pasanda Silva, together with the co-conveners, Mr. Pandula Wanyarachi, Mr. Oshan Uberatna, Ms. Nikini Mafitigama, and myself. I must also note that the third legal symposium organized by the Seminars Committee held at Hotel Club Palm Bay, Maravilla over this weekend concluded successfully a short while ago. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the President of the Bar Association, Mr. Salia Pires, President Council, and the other members of the Management Committee of the BASL for their support and guidance. Today's topic of discussion is My Mobile World, mobile phone photography. As you would also agree, though this is slightly different than our usual topic of discussion, it is very relevant today. Almost all of us are involved in day-to-day mobile phone photo taking, uploading, sharing it with our friends and family on various social media platforms. Let it be photographs of ourselves, our get-togethers, sunsets, pets, other animals, other sceneries, or anything else. We all love taking photographs and capturing the moment. I warmly welcome today two individuals who have taken their love for photography to the next level. Mr. Dilan Wickramaratne of the Photographic Society of Sri Lanka and our very own Mr. Tisha Veragoda, attorney at law. Mr. Dilan Wickramaratne is a marine engineer by profession. He's been taking photographs for almost 40 years. He is an active member of both the mobile photography group and the street and travel photography group of the Photographic Society of Sri Lanka. Mr. Tisha Veragoda is no stranger to our fraternity. He holds an LLB from the University of Colombo, an LLM from the National University of Singapore. He is a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK, and as well as the Associate Chartered Management Accountant UK and a Chartered Global Management Accountant. He is also an accomplished amateur photographer who has held 3 exhibitions in Colombo, Dhaka, and Durban. If the viewers have any questions, please do send them through the Q&A box. This session is also live streamed on YouTube. Without further ado, I would like to now hand over the session to Mr. Veragoda. Sir.
Thank you, Anne. Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be the moderator of this session about something that I love next to law, which is photography. I am sure that most of you who follow me on social media know that I love taking photos and I love uploading them onto social media, be it some random thing that happens on a street side or some scenery that I come across along the way. In one way or another, we are all journalists. We capture things through our senses and we share them with the general public. So in that sense, we have all now become journalists. All we need is the mobile phone and a platform. I think with the advent of social media, our space for expression has exploded basically to a level where we can demonstrate our skills, we can share even things that are mundane. And sometimes in the process, we sometimes come across things that become national news headlines. Be that as it may, as lawyers, I think all of us need to have a work-life balance. And giving space and time for our artistic abilities, I personally think, is a very important way to keep our sanity going. So for me, for the last 15 years that I've been a lawyer, photography is what has kept my sanity going because it is a way to express myself. It is a way to enjoy myself. I'm sure Mr. Wickramaratne, who had been an engineer and traveling all over, would share the same sentiment, that it gives him relaxation and it gives him so much of pleasure to take photos and share them with his viewers. I would like to now call upon Mr. Vikramaratne to make his presentation. If you do have any questions, please do share them on Q&A so that we can post them. I think we are trying to have a discussion, so we would appreciate questions coming in. As and when it's necessary, we will post it to Mr. Vikramaratne. Mr. Vikramaratne, if you could start your presentation.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. Good evening, everybody. Now, my history is I am a marine engineer by profession and started taking photographs when there was film and that kind of camera. And then finally came on to digital cameras, DSLR. And then I was using a mobile phone, but I was not really taking pictures for a while. Then once the mobile phones came up to a certain standard, I started using it more and more because I always carry a phone with me and there is no camera in hand. And then as of late, last 2-3 years, I realized that you can take quite interesting pictures with the mobile phone because the technology is improved. I'm using a phone that is about 3 generations back. It's a Samsung S10. And I take pictures as they are, but I use post-processing on the phone and use a very basic app. It's called Snapseed. I think some of you must be aware of it. Very easy to use. And since in mobile photography, you can use all the rules and various things that you use for digital photography, or you can develop your things as you go on because you are going for a different audience and viewers. So I have divided my subjects just to show that you can use it for various subjects. So it will be in different sections, and any questions that you have with regard to how I took it or what interested me in that, anything like that, I can answer. So I think I will start right now. And so since my sort of basic, the thing how I got noticed was because of the photographs I took at sea. And these are like, I would call seascapes. And so I will start on this. This is a passenger ship. Initial in photographs in Panama at the initial stage of COVID, when there were only 6 COVID patients on this and no other passengers. And sunset with this lighting and all that interested me. This is actually my view when I wake up every morning from my porthole, the window. So you get different clouds, sun, sea, various conditions. So first thing I do normally, I look out, and if something is interesting, I take a picture. It's a similar type of cloud formation, which I used in a composition with the part of the ship's structure. This is again an evening photograph. This was in the far, somewhere near China, that side. This is that same area, just a little bit further, closer to the land. This is looking up. I saw this seagull going up, and the background like that. I thought it was interesting.
Now, Mr. Vikram,
yes.
Now, these are all photos taken with your mobile, is it?
Mobile, yes.
Right. Okay.
This is actually my ship when it was in a shipyard. It's a bit of an unusual view because one, it's half painted Two, it's on dry land. And because of the wide angle you get in a mobile photo camera, you can get the whole thing, and you get this different perspective of the ship itself. This is after the ship has been painted. This is a similar view. This is my usual morning view, but difference here is it was raining like today, and there was water running on the glass. So it made a sort of effect. When I took the picture, it looked like a watercolor painting, something of that nature. This is more like a abstract thing I took somewhere in Indonesia or something like that. The fading light, and sort of made a design. So this is again evening view from my ship. Different conditions. This is passing Singapore with dark clouds and close to a storm sort of thing. Now here the weather has got worse. You can see the waves are with this white color sort of waves, but in the distance you get sunlight. This picture was taken in Malaysia, almost with the, there is no rain or anything like that. Almost always in this particular port, you will get this kind of sunset. It's a little bit earlier, same place. This is also in that port, but when you are going out to sea, it was early morning and just before the sun actually rose, and this gantries created an interesting pattern with the silhouette. This is again somewhere the ship was in anchor, and there were these unusual cloud formations. With the view of another ship, again with the sunset, you get all different, the orange and the blue and everything, and the reflection. So here again, the clouds are interesting. So this has to be in Malaysia because of the flag that you see. This is somewhere, I can't remember exactly, but I used part of the ship's equipment to compose this picture with this cloud formation. This is actually taken at night. This time, when I'm walking, then most ships have only a few lights in the accommodation because it affects visibility. So, and there was the moon in the clouds, and looked interesting to me. This is again in Malaysia, that earlier place, but a wider angle. This is also somewhere in that area with these clouds and this gantry crane. Again, evening photograph. This is, I have cropped and one of the earlier photographs, made it a mono photograph and used sort of a design sort of element in this. This is somewhere close to Singapore. Again, in humid areas, you get these dark clouds. This is oil refinery. Is the same refinery with a wider angle, then you see the actual cloud. This one again in the one of this is in Singapore. These gantries are all green that place. I took it because of the color, the sort of design, the pattern, the thing. Also, I think Singapore. The sea was an unusual color. This is also Singapore, that same area, but we would have been leaving the port. So the clouds have changed. Sunset is affecting that. This is in China. It's actually a very long land bridge.
Is that the bridge that connects Macau?
No, this is somewhere close to, there is a place called Sheku, and you're going towards that. And actually you see only a bit of the bridge here. The rest of the bridge, a few kilometers, is covered. And then at this point, it goes underwater. It's like a terminus-like thing. And then it appears maybe a kilometer away on the other side of the river. This is another picture of some port, I can't remember which, but I have done some experimental things with the snapseed. Again, these days a lot of ships are, this should be Singapore because of this. Ships are at anchor because port congestion and these COVID things and all that. And in the evening, you got the sun bursting through the clouds, and that interested me here. This is again Singapore. I took this picture while the ship was moving out of the port because of the sort of design thing that you get here. Again, that Singapore area, different cropping of the same photographs. This is also harbour in Singapore. This is one very large container ship going in. This is Hong Kong. When you are going towards the port, it is the evening, so the buildings are in dark and in silhouette. This is also same. Now we have to go under this bridge to the port that we go in. Now this is, we have come past the bridge and the sun was setting. This is actually in China. They just a close up I took. When they build ports, they make these enclosures like things. So when the port needs to be expanded, they just fill up these things. They are in the sea. I don't know whether it's a river, it was huge. And there's continual, if you see, these are long, huge bridges being built. So they are always, they have their next plan ready. This is somewhere in Malaysia. So again, I'm not sure which place it was, but maybe Indonesia even. But the sky was interesting. It's the same place, different angle. It's also same area. It's usually very difficult to take wildlife or that kind of thing. So I was planning for a long time to take a picture, and I managed to get this particular picture. It was not a very good effort, but with a DSLR and a zoom lens, it would have been a very much better picture, but this was about one of the better ones I could take. This is actually my ship. When I left, I was stuck for more than 1 year on this ship. And I had to, when I was leaving the ship during this COVID, This was my home for more than a year. So that is more on the seascapes.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
now,
Uttamaratne, when you take these photos,
yes,
do you now do you have to take them in a wide angle and then crop them, or do you plan your shots in a particular way before you take them, or you just, because digital photos are literally for free, do you just keep on clicking and look at the best one, which most of us do?
now when I'm on a sort of a particular run, I know that in certain places there is a bridge, there is a landmark, there is a weather condition. So when I know, okay, if this condition is there, I may be able to take this photograph. So I plan in that sense. So in the sense that I more or less, if I'm going to known areas, I know that this time there'll be a sunset, then the sun will fall here, all those things. Then once I go to take the photographs, I take pictures as the scenery or whatever the subject develops, and more or less I take what I want, and then I don't take everything and then select. I take what I want and then reject what I don't want.
Right. And also now, especially in the sea or in a moving, you're in a floating device, basically.
Yes.
So you do have a travel plan, so to speak. Do you do research if you're going into a new area? Do you do some research? What can I take photos of? What do I pass? Do you do that sort of thing also, and sort of have a plan in mind, or just
now at the moment, when we go to sea, you can't go shore. So it is basically you have to take the sea at sea, or arriving or going past land, or in the port itself. So your photographs are limited to those areas. So before that, if you are going to ports, okay, you are going ashore, so okay, you plan, okay, I'll go to this place and take photographs, that kind of thing. But now that opportunity is now not there at the moment because of the COVID situation.
Right.
So
no, what I meant was, like, let's say that you're traveling towards on a route that you had not previously traveled. So if that sort of thing happens, do you read up and try to plan for things? That was my question, rather.
Yes, definitely. I look up, like, say, if I'm going to, say, a port, and I know normally with the present day, you don't get much time to go out, but say maybe 6 hours, 8 hours. Then I look up the places of interest, in place that might look nice, all these things. And then when I go to the port, that is where I will head straight off.
Right. Okay. Do you have some examples of things which people could maybe
I will see whether I can show now. Say, for example, if I go now, I was traveling in Guatemala.
Right.
So then I had this plan that I must see this Mayan ruins and things like that. So I was planning for a while so that there was sufficient time for me to go and come back to the ship also. And then once we went there, I got my taxi guy and I said, okay, today we have time, let's go. So like that, wherever that I could, in the old days, that time there were no mobile phones. Ships used to stay in ports for 3 days, 4 days, 1 week, even 1 month we have stayed. Now that situation has finished because of shipping, the changes in shipping itself. So now, you have basically your options are to see a city, or the sort of things you had to see in a city, like parks and various things like that. Or if you go to sort of a more remote areas, you may be able, South America and all, you may be able to travel to areas that have things of interest.
Right.
So I will now show some travel photographs. This photograph was taken long time ago from a Samsung J7. This is in Houston. So this also, I know that every single evening, this kind of sky condition or something similar will happen. So 5:30 in the evening, I have the DSLR and the phone in hand. I am waiting for this to happen. This is in Colombia, port called Cartagena. So when I wake up and I looked out, I saw the reflections and I knew that you make a good picture. It's the same thing, but with different view. This is the same port. We were leaving the port and the sun was setting and made an interesting picture. This is in Puerto Rico, place called San Juan, and this is some kind of silos and the reflections and the calm water. That is what caught my eye. It is the same place. So you can see, you see some structure, architectural thing or natural thing, and you observe it, and you find on a daily basis there can be different weather, light conditions which make. Now here the sun rays coming was what interested me. So the similar way, like in our areas, now I go to the beach, I'm in Mount Lavinia. There are also things keep changing day by day. So if you go one day, it doesn't mean that you take on all the conditions or the photographs possible. You have to go again and again, then you also get an idea of how things can change. This photograph was taken, I think, in Jamaica. Again, this because of this reflections of the gantries and the clouds that interested me.
So, Vikramaraj, could you possibly explain to our viewers about, now these are some fantastic, interesting photos, travel photography. Could you explain to our viewers about maybe, if these are lawyers who are not trained with the art of photography, if you could maybe help them understand how a frame should be done, how maybe some of the techniques that one could use to give emphasis to something. Now, for example, in this photo, when I look at it, the first thing that catches my eye is the convergence of lines to one particular point. So that's where our eye goes. Then the second thing that our eye goes to is the small tug that is in the middle of the photo. So likewise, there are certain techniques that people use, or there are certain techniques or theories that people use in photography when it comes to framing. Maybe if you could teach some of those skills also to our listeners, it might add some value. Because some of us might not know, we might take the photos, but we might not know what exactly we are doing or how best we can improve. So if you could also help us with some of those things.
Okay, I can do that. So actually, in most from the time of paintings, you need to get some kind of thing to lead your eye into the picture, and what the painters sort of found out was they call it a rule of third. So they divide this side by 3 and one line here, one line here, another line here, and this side another line here. So then you have converging points of these horizontal and vertical lines. So you try to put your subject into one of these converging points. So it may be in the cross here, cross center, or not the center, these places. So when you put it in that, naturally your eye leads into that point. This is coming from a even earlier theory. There was a sort of a scroll-like thing. I can't remember. It was called as what it was called, a circadian thing or something. If in that they say everything natural fits into that sort of a scroll-like thing that comes. So that is how this eye leading business is there. So basically that is one of the things that you use. But then sometimes when you take photographs, you can't get that your subject into that point. So there are some ways of overcoming. You take the photograph after you take the photograph, what you do is you can crop it, you can cut it, so that when you go to a cropping in your application, those points. So that is one way. There is nothing wrong in centering the subject, as long as there is rules are there, as guidelines only. Something might be more effective with the subject in the center, but initially what you go for is on your composition, something like that. Then you, of course, the subject matter, that is what interested you in the first place. But then you can see, like now these clouds. Now these clouds, if you expose this picture too much, they will vanish. You won't see them. But if you even take a picture that is not that good, and you reduce the exposure, you suddenly see things like clouds coming in. But then you will lose the detail on these buildings. So the clouds came in and you lost all these things. So then what you do is, you have in any basic application for post-processing, you can increase the intensity of the shadows. So then you have got the clouds by reducing the light or the highlights, and then you can increase like this. So you play around with these sliders on those controls till it comes to your preference. So that is sort of a basic thing on how you take it, compose the picture, and then also then other thing is to see design. In natural thing, you get certain design factors, various things that you see, and you can take a picture to highlight that. So those are some of the things that you use when you compose the pictures. Does that help?
Thank you. So I think there are certain other theories also, for example, the leading lines to various things. But I think the important thing is for amateur photographers like us who just happily take photos on our phones, the important thing is to sort of storytell. So in that sense, sometimes it might be useful for us to maybe look at some of those also, but please continue with your presentation. It's very interesting to see all these new places that we rarely come across.
Now this is also...
We lost your screen for some reason. We lost your screen.
Have you got the screen now?
Yes, I think you'll need to double click and expand the photos.
Right. This was taken in Panama. And here also it was, you get various other things, like you can position things on diagonal lines and various things. Here it was just that I found that this boat, so I couldn't get it into a third because it will cut the ship away. But the wake from this boat was interesting with this calm water and all this. So that is how I took that. This is in place called Port-au-Prince in Haiti. And here again, it was the light, early morning light. It is a very interesting place. Within 3 hours, you can have severe storm. This is the same place. And we actually had a storm about 3 hours after that. So what you see as dots here are people living on the hillside. And these houses, I can't post the pictures, the DSLR pictures actually. They are on a very sharp incline. This place, when it rains, that's why you get landslide. A lot of people die. So very interesting light and weather patterns there.
Before you move into the next question, we have a couple of questions that have come.
Yeah.
One is, what are the best settings that should be enabled in your phone camera in order to capture the best spontaneous Kodak moments? Example, indoors when a toddler is playing or when someone is hiking. Then it goes on to say, is your mobile phone camera, say, fairly latest model, good enough, or should you invest in something like a GoPro? What are the pros and cons?
Now, as regards a GoPro, I have never used one. But with one of the newer phones, not even a flagship phone or a lesser model phone, the camera is more than sufficient. Then if you use, like say in Samsung, you get a thing called photo. So if you use that, it will give even these, what happens with the mobile phone is whatever picture that you take is enhanced by the phone itself immediately with the software in the phone camera system. Then you get a fairly decent picture. Then you can activate on the side, you get a small star-like thing at the bottom. If you activate that, it enhances the photograph. So that actually helps in certain conditions. But say if you are taking a sunset, that will become too red. So you have to note that and switch that off, then it is okay. But if you go beyond that point, like you are not satisfied with that and you want to improve, especially night photography, things like that, you get what you call a pro setting. You get a thing where you go to pro. Then you have a certain amount of adjustments which you can make manually, the shutter speed, aperture in some, things like that. You have settings, different settings that not in the pro, but fixed settings for food photography, night photography, various things. So you have to experiment with that. But if you go to the pro mode, you can, now this is taken at night of a moving ship. So it's not 100%, but I can actually, this was taken using only the camera setting. But I can actually improve on this if I took it on the pro mode, where I adjust the settings. So I think in case that you don't have time, you just take it from the camera and then you can do most things with the post-processing. So the next question.
Yes. Could you please let us know the additional apps you use for mobile photography? For example, retouching on photos.
I only use this Snapseed. I don't use anything else.
Right.
But that is within my digital capabilities. Other things are generally beyond my, in the sense I'm too lazy to go into those things. But with the Snapseed alone, you can do a lot of things.
That's correct. And I think even the Photoshop Express app, which offers a lot of free options, and also the Lightroom Express that is available on Google Play Store as well as on iTunes, which offers free service. You don't need a subscription for that. Gives you a lot of options on editing. I think Photoshop even allows you to separate between the subject and the background, and you to manipulate exposure to saturation to everything on the subject as well as the background separately. So those apps might be of some use. You don't need a subscription paying $9 a month or whatever for Photoshop. You can use the basic features. It gives you some overlays and also presets, which you can easily use, just 2 clicks, and your photo is done basically.
Yes, actually, with those sort of Lightroom and Photoshop are sort of professional what you call post-processing tools which are on computers. They have been developed for use on phones. And Snapseed, this goes the other way. It is like more for the people who are not that they don't have that much of an idea about things. And I find that is my fastest tool. The other ones, if I try to use them, I'll take a little time if I'm not familiar anyway. So even on the laptop, I use only the basic, the photo viewer. Other than that, I don't have hardly ever use Photoshop, and I have a very ancient Photoshop version. Once in a way, I use that, but generally, that is how things go. So,
right, and there's one more.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yes.
go ahead. Sorry,
yes,
I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Please go ahead.
No, go ahead with the question. I can take the question.
You appear to have used a texture on these photos. Can you explain this, please? I think that is with regard to some of the grain that was noticeable in some of the photos that you had shared earlier of the seascapes.
Actually, the grain that appears when you are using some of these sometimes you don't see it, because if you see a small screen, you don't see the grain. And now, say if I see it's like this, I go back to the program or something, and I reduce the shadows. This will go, but there is also another one sort of control there, which is for structure and sharpness. So if you reduce structure, the grain vanishes, but the photo becomes a bit softer sometimes. But if now this one, if I reduce structure, this grain will go. Otherwise, I have to reduce the what you call the shadows. Then this will become more black, and the grain will disappear. Actually, you have to take time, photograph by photograph, to do that. So sometimes when I take the photograph and I get the desired result, I know, okay, I can do this. Unless I'm going to use the photograph for something, like that, then only I do all those finer things. But other than that, so you will get grain because automatically the camera is changing the ISO also. Because it's dark, that is the sort of ISO is like the sensitivity of the original days for the film, but nowadays for the digital camera also they have some kind of thing where it enhances the capacity of absorbing the light, but then at the same time you get additional grain. So then you can knock this off in post-processing. Answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
These are all in New Orleans. So now I know that these two bridges are there. I know I will be in the middle of it at that time. So I know 100% that I can take this picture. So now, say at the time that I took it, I would have taken it on the camera on its normal setting. But now I would probably take it on the pro setting. So when I approach the bridge, I will adjust the lights and all that the way I want. And then, so as of late, I've been doing a lot of that kind of thing with the pro setting, night shots especially. So here it was this unusual reflections that attracted me. This is, I think, a sugar refinery or something that has been abandoned. And contrast with the clouds and these modern buildings. That's what was interesting. Now here, if I try to do rule of third or something, the modern buildings should have gone. So here, the same building, and on this side you get this, it's I think a replica of a Mississippi paddle wheeler. During the day, the same bridges. These are smaller ships waiting out anchorage in Panama. This is again that to that Haiti. Now you see the conditions are changing. This is in Hong Kong. This was early morning in China, in Shanghai. This is also the same place. I reduce the exposure because then I can get this black contrast and composition like this.
Mr. Vikramaratne, was this done post-processing or did you?
No, the sun was very bright.
Okay.
So automatically these things become silhouette.
Yeah, so if you could explain to our viewers how a silhouette photograph should be taken, where should you focus, what sort of exposure should you set? If you could just maybe teach them a little bit about how to do this.
Right. Now, if you get, say, the sun behind your subject, so your light won't reach the subject that you are photographing. So that will result in a silhouette. But the issues that you would get is if the sun is too bright, then that area of the photograph will be wiped out. So in that situation, you have to either change your angle or you have to use the pro settings and reduce the shutter speed and the ISO, all those things. Then when you compose the picture itself, you have to look at something that will look interesting when it is like this in contrast, where the color of the subject matter does not matter. You know, it's not important, but the shape and structure is more important. So when I take on a normal DSLR, this is very easy. You can just change the exposure up and down until you get the desired effect. On the camera also, if you go to the pro setting, you can do plus or minus. So in this case, if you want to get better silhouette, you reduce the exposure, you go towards minus. But now my camera, you can go only 2 stops towards the minus. But I think the newer cameras may be even more. So that is what the only leeway you have. Other than that, you have to select the time of the day so that the sun is not so bright, or the atmospheric conditions where the sun can't shine too brightly. So that is how, when you go for the silhouettes. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
This is from the plane when I was coming back. And with the mobile phone, you can still do fairly interesting picture. So you have to make sure that your glass is clean, the in interior there are no smudges and all these things. And then when there is no light reflecting from this, because we have a double glass there, and have to be a bit lucky also for the light to be exactly correct. This is also aerial shot, some kind of a resort you get in the sea in this place. It's close to Singapore somewhere. Now here, when I have just played around with the settings a bit, that's why with this grain, but you can take out the grain or whatever it is. But I change the colors a bit so that you get this kind of, otherwise it's a very plain itself. And then these three, the rudders and these are showing, so that's what interested me. So that is a few of the travel photographs. Next, I will go to some local photographs. This is our own Mount Lavinia beach. This is, of course, the subject is self-explanatory, but these guys are not posing or anything. This is, they are doing their job. This is a sort of interesting place, small shrine for everyone. Only thing is now things keep adding on and on. Now this area is become bigger, and various things. Finally, it will be fully built up. All gods are represented inside this shrine room. Here again, that before that boat was being pulled in, I have adjusted the light conditions so that post-processing, so that the clouds are shown and all these things. Otherwise, these clouds will be lighter, and then the shadows of the coconut trees also made into an interesting picture. This was actually when I came back. I was in quarantine on Marine Drive, and 14 days there was nothing much to take except this particular view. But it used to change, and different composition. Now this is straight from the window of the hotel. So I used the the small coral formation, the little bit of beach greenery. And the funny colors are because the hotel windows are tinted. This cloud,
I was about to ask whether you use filters on the phone itself.
I was in this Ozo hotel. The windows are tinted.
Right.
So this is also this mushroom cloud. If there is a clear day and little humid every day, about 7 o'clock, 7:30, you would see this. So the crows made it a little bit more interesting. So this is a crow flying close. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the thing very sharp. It is in the evening, but I have adjusted the colors a little bit. These I have worked with the tones. These on Mount Lavinia Beach. These are fairly common subjects from common compositions, but if you take the picture that, I normally go for a walk, and then when I take the picture, walk, I take a picture, I try to, at least replicate or get a bit interesting viewpoint or something, just to develop your skills. And then you can sometimes use the same skill when you are taking a digital, photograph with a camera. So here again, you would see probably the screen structure and all these things, but those are things that can be removed with the click of a button. Now here you get this banding and all these things because the sun was bright. It was trying to handle all these things. It's more of in the nature of a street photograph. I'm not sure. I think it's a Hindu thing, but looks a bit like a King Neptune's trident. He's also on that shrine room area on the beach. This is actually inside the shrine room. This log has been floating around that area for years. This was interesting because of the silhouette of the person meditating. In the morning, the fish being sold, all those things. These two boys have purchased one and they're going home.
Mr. Vikramatne, we've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
One is, do you change contrast, brightness, etc. in your pictures?
After I take the pictures, I definitely do, because on the Snapseed, you get one which offers you brightness, contrast, saturation, highlights, shadows, warmth, and ambience. So I use most of those to get, the desired sort of effect that I want. If it is like overexposed, I will reduce the highlights. If it is underexposed, I will increase the shadows. If overall the whole picture needs brightening up, I might use the brightness. And then the contrast also sometimes I use so that, I get the desired effect. Now, if you take this picture, generally it is okay. But if I work more, this area of the fish is white. So you probably can get a little more detail here if I, work this more or use a more professional application to do that.
Right. The next question is, please let us know the best mobile phones to carry out nighttime photography.
At this moment, with the reviews that I have read, the Apple 13 Plus or whatever, that one, they say is better than the Samsung. Then there is the MI phone, MI 11, the latest MI phone, which some reviewers say beats all of those phones.
Right.
The software on the phone does various things to enhance the. So I would think that even Samsung would have those same details in the photograph, and with the what do you call the post processing, you should be able to bring out most of those details. Now, these days, I was taking night photographs. I haven't put one here yet today, but this you would have seen pictures of light streams when vehicles go past and things like that. And I suddenly found that I can take that easily, but I never realized earlier. So a certain amount is your skill with the phone. So if you go for a phone which has this night shooting and you lose out on something else, which how much photographs you take at night and how many a day, maybe the design on specifications good for night, or whether you select one for day because has a reasonable night because you take more photographs at day, and maybe the other phone has some other thing like a better zoom or something like that. So you have to decide on that basis. But if you definitely specialize on night photography or take more of the night photographs, then best is to have that kind of thing.
Right. We do have about another 10 to 15 minutes left for our session to conclude.
Yes.
There are certain other photos that you would like to share with us, maybe some street photography, because
I can go to street.
When you talk about mobile photography, street photography is a very important aspect, because all of us down streets we can see various things. So maybe if you could show us some examples and how to take photos, how to maybe conduct yourself also, it might be of some importance.
Now, actually, with regard to street photography, I haven't taken much in terms of human subjects as such, but I have taken street and photographs of that nature where, the actual urban situation interested me. So this is some of them. So this was in Colombia. It was at a crossing, road crossing. This crossing doesn't mean anything, a bit like Sri Lanka. You take your chances, but these fellows will not stop normally. This is actually people working in my ship. That this is kind of work that I do normally. This is guys having a bit of fun after work. So it is like you use the action and various things. This was actually at a street photography session at the PSSR, the first time that I went out for something like that. And actually the subject matter is okay, but the lighting and all that was not sufficient here. Now I could have worked on this if I had known at that time the techniques to take this properly using the pro modes. So then one thing you can do is when you take a photograph and you find that, this is grainy or something like that, you can increase the grain and use that also as a subject in the photograph. Some pictures, especially if they have some kind of a sort of a retro kind of feel about the subject composition, you can increase the grain and make the photograph something like that. This is an empty railway station after everybody has gone. Here it was the composition with these lines on the steps and the shadows. The same thing coming out of that. You can see the shadows of the photographic group. Now, these kind of walls and all these things can be interesting in themselves, because of the graffiti or whatever similar things. The mold, all these things make designs. Recently, I took some photographs similar to with those things in a wall. Here it is sort of, again, the eye leading this one arch into another arch kind of thing at the mosque in Vellavatta. here it was the, the design, all these markings road that was interesting. Is in the middle of all this, there was this sort of old style building, and alongside on this road, not maintained, not looked after, had this sort of atmosphere about it. That's why I took it. He's a chap making garlands in front of the wheel. Now this person, he was like a homeless person. Now when you approach, now in this particular case, the man was asleep. So he did not mind my taking photographs anyway. But if you approach people on the street, there are two ways to do it. One is you take it at a distance discreetly or whatever. Otherwise, correct procedure is you should go and ask the person if he or she minds taking a photograph, say this you're taking as a hobby or something like that. And that is the actual way. Otherwise, there's a risk, that somebody may not like what you are doing because you are intruding into their personal life. So
I
the correct
actually
thing,
do have a different view to that when it comes to street photography.
yeah,
But maybe we can discuss it once you finish with this set of photos.
yeah.
Maybe we can discuss on that.
Yeah, you can do. So street photography, actually I have separated only these.
Right.
But there is another lot.
So my take on street photography is that streets are places of for general public. Anything that can be seen by the eye can also be recorded, and therefore things that happen on the streets can be photographed, unless there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. For example, somebody walking out of a, let's say, something like an HIV clinic, or somebody who is coming out of a drug rehabilitation center. That sort of thing, maybe they expect some degree of privacy, but otherwise, if you're on a street and you're sleeping because you're drunk or because you're homeless, does not necessarily have that sort of protection in terms of the law. And if you do have to go and speak to the person before you take the photo, you might lose that expression that the person would naturally have, thereby effectively ruining the moment, so to speak. So there is this massive debate among Sri Lankan photographers whether street photography is something that you should do or otherwise. But I think there are certain other considerations also. It might be proper and polite to go and speak to that person afterwards saying, I took this photo. But necessarily, I don't feel that there is a requirement that one should do so. I think that's how street photography has developed over the years. But of course, there is this consideration of what we call reasonable expectation of privacy that sometimes we have to give to people.
Yes, that sort of in the sort of street photography by nature, you have to capture candid photographs. And then by law, I suppose there is nothing to prevent you taking a photograph of anybody or something. But if that particular person feels he is not going to look at the legal point, he will come to argue with you. When I was on that night shoot, strangely enough, the one place that objected to my taking photographs in the night of a building, a church, from the road, and the security guard came up to me and said, you can't take photographs. I was on the pavement and I was not photographing anything that was banned or anything. I was perfectly within my rights to take the photograph. But that guy objected. But then I was passing a four-wheel, and within 100 yards, and the four-wheel had interesting gate. And I was photographing, and some people from the four-wheel, they asked why I have taken the pictures. I said I have taken because of this reason, and they said, yes, go ahead. So you have people that react in different ways, but not necessarily in a legal, they are not using any legal frame or anything. You can, of course, there's nothing to prevent you from, taking the picture. But, and as you say, if you go and tell the fellow, I'm going to take a photograph, the fellow might start posing. So that issue is there. So you have to make a judgment depending on each individual situation. So I just got a few animal photographs just to show, it can be done a reasonable amount. But definitely you cannot zoom properly and take and all that in cell phones yet, but soon it will come to that point. But you can still capture something. This was when I first bought the phone, so I was not yet very good at taking those pictures. But then this is another picture. This is an area that you can take pictures any day. It's near the Bay Area, and you will get interesting pictures. This guy is a resident of that area, so he'll be somewhere. This is the picture you show on the ship. I think this particular photograph, I have done more work and taken out a little bit of the grain and things like that. This fellow was on the window of the hotel. This is a normal domestic spider. It's not a real macro, but as close as I could take. This is one of my pets. This was interesting because of the composition. These guys all attack the black ant. This is another of my pets. These are two frogs. They are mating. And it's a fairly common type of toad. So I was trying to get close, but then with my particular phone, I don't have a very good macro. Even if I had, I wouldn't have been able to get this fellow and this fellow in focus together. This is also some form of, I think, not a spider, something else, on a flower. This is another toad. I saw this and took it because of the interesting colors. Anyone can imagine what this is? It is actually bitter gourd, caravilla, after it's ripe and fallen on the ground near some small granite stones, and this little frog was there. So it looked interesting. So how are we for time? I think we have.
There is one more question. With that, we will conclude. Can you offer some guidance on storage of photos? Should you use multiple redundant drives, cloud to avoid the risk of hardware failure? Second question, is there any best method for naming your folders for easy retrieval? Please advise.
With regard to storage, I have multiple drives. Now, the thing with all these drives is, now, say the laptop or computer, no, the older ones, you had the hard drive, which was the standard type ones, and off and on those fail. So I always had bigger and bigger external hard drives, which are also working in that same principle and more or less duplicated. But I suppose the best way is to upload into some cloud storage application. Sometimes you get it if you get a laptop or something, or you can pay and you get certain amount free in certain things. Then with regard to storage, now the SSD storage is, in theory, looks more reliable than the old way where you have a disk, so there is no mechanical failure. But like with all things in electronics, you can have failures. At the moment, I am using multiple hard drives. The only thing is, as your phone gets better and the capacity of the photograph becomes bigger, you need bigger and bigger storage things. So that is the issue that you have. So that sort of thing, the cloud will be the thing. But now, say like me, I take photographs almost every day. So in the end, even cloud also will not be enough. So I'll have to pay for it. So that kind of issue is there. Then the second question was about naming the photographs. No, normally when you take pictures with a camera of any sort, it has a sequence of how it saves on it. But then when you collect them, now what I do is generally I put it into a folder on, say, on that particular day, and I put it into the folder and I date it. Then when I want to look for the photograph or the folders, I search and you see the folders, and you can ask to select by date, the priority. And then on that way, it comes in what we call according to date, and I can select it. But other than that, I also sometimes copy like subject matter, like now say for this kind of thing, I have it separated in subject matter as well. So it depends on how you want to use it. If you want to find old photograph, the easiest way is to date the day you took the photographs in a folder and chuck them into that. And then when you feel okay, that day and the place, location also, then you go and pick the photographs from there. Then if you want to use them for something else, the different subjects, you separate that and put it into another photograph, say birds or something in separate place like that. So that is how I do it.
Thank you very much for the insights. I think another option that is available is when you take photos using your mobile phones, they are automatically geotagged.
Yeah.
So if you want to search for a place now, if you search for photos by date, you might not be able to locate them because you might forget what day you actually took those photos. So if you're saving your photos only on your phone, which is backed up to a cloud, then the easiest thing is to go on your geotags and easily find the location, because you generally remember where you took that good photo. So rather than the date on which you took that photo. So it's a lot easier, at least that's what I do. When I want to search for a photo of a particular location, I just look at the geotags and find out where that photo is. That's at least how so far I've done my retrieval of photos that are saved on my phone. I think that's also another option for you, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good.
Right. I think with that, we are coming to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Mr. Dilan Wickramaratne, for your valuable time. We saw some fantastic photos of countries that we rarely get to see. We don't really hear of people going to Haiti and to Guatemala and countries like that. So thank you very much for that wonderful opportunity for us to see places that we rarely get to see. I think all of us had a lot to learn from you. Thank you very much. And I would hand back the controls to Anne to come to a conclusion with this session.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka and the Seminars Committee, I would like to thank you both, Mr. Dilan Wickramaratne and Mr. Tisha Weeragoda, Attorney at Law, for the informative and valuable session filled with useful tips that can be incorporated on our next capture. I would also like to thank all our participants who have joined us through Zoom and YouTube, and for all your questions that has made this webinar an interesting one. Thank you, everyone. Join us again next time at 7 p.m. for another webinar on this series on a different topic. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for inviting me. This pleasure to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Dilan, for coming on board.